Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here. Today I'm going to do a quick review on Blueprint for the Bodybuilder. This is a booklet from Vince Gironda. It's still available, I guess the original is still available on eBay if you're lucky, and it will set you back almost $100 US. Iron Guru also sells this particular booklet as a scanned copy for a lot less, just letting you know where the information is retrieved from. Now, I have to admit I really enjoyed Vince Gironda's Blueprint for the Bodybuilder. In essence, it basically goes through Vince Gironda's ideas on supplementation, diet, and protein. So let's get into it. I really think that Vince Gironda's Blueprint for the Bodybuilder is basically a pocket resource on all of Vince's diets and supplementation advice. It goes through the types of protein that are best for bodybuilders, mainly animal. Back then, the hype was desiccated liver, and he talks about the great benefits of desiccated liver. So there's basically chapters on each of these topics. He talks about the benefits of eggs that I've already done a previous video on why, for example, Vince would occasionally prescribe bodybuilders to do 6 to 8 weeks of 3 dozen eggs a day. That video basically went viral, thank you. I've talked about the steak and eggs diet. I can also link the video up here, and it is also briefly mentioned in this booklet. Besides these topics, vitamins and glandulars are also talked about, as well as what I think is the best part of this booklet, and that is his 3-step approach to weight gaining, weight reduction, and then maximum definition. Why I think this is the greatest part of this book is because I think there's so much information on Vince out there, and a lot of people get confused. Oh, but Vince said this and Vince said that, and you know, it's confusing unless you don't know in which context he gives this information. Some of the information he gives is good for hard gainers. Others information might be good for someone who's been already bodybuilding for several years and is now looking at trimming down. And then some other information he may have given is for someone who's ready for competition. So let's have a look at these other topics that he talks about. As mentioned, this is a scan, for example, of the section on protein and the beginning on desiccated liver. As mentioned, with the protein section, as an example, I'm not going to show you the whole booklet, that would be copyright infringement, but for example, this scan shows the amount of protein, for example, from different kinds of animal food, and it goes through lots of tips. And basically, that's another great thing about this booklet. There's many tips given, and each of these little paragraphs contain like a tip that you could almost apply immediately into your into your dietary considerations. That's what I love about this book. Every little paragraph is gold, really. It's fantastic. So yeah, it's in that respect, every little morsel of information you get from Vince, you can apply. It's really fantastic. This is what, as I said, what I really enjoyed in the booklet, which, as I said before, it really is a summary of Vince's ideas on diet. There's really a 3-step approach explained in this book. Vince gives excellent tips on gaining weight. For example, throughout this chapter, he talks about eating small meals, only 6 small meals a day, and this is especially important for hard gainers who find it hard to put on weight. For hard gainers, for example, he recommends these 6 small meals because they're easier to digest and assimilate. It keeps the body having a positive nitrogen balance, and therefore the body becomes more anabolic and is able to put on weight faster. So this is especially for little runts that are looking to get big. You know, you want to gain 40 pounds, 50 pounds. Yeah, this chapter's for you. He also recommends drinking raw unpasteurized milk for hard gainers and people looking at gaining weight. Unlike later on where he actually recommends stopping milk for people that are cutting down. No dairy is a big thing that Vince says for people that are cutting up, and instead having protein. And really, for gaining weight, actually, Vince is pro, and I'll repeat it, pro carbohydrates. That's why he actually recommends milk, because milk, whether you know it or not, has quite a lot of carbohydrates. He also talks about having whole grain cereals, and for example, let's have a quick look at the booklet. Whole grain wheat, whole grain bread, potatoes, things like that. Basically, whole foods that are high in carbohydrates are excellent for weight gaining. So he's absolutely right about that. That is what we practice nowadays, and it was practiced back then. However, for weight reduction, he has a different approach. This starts involving regimentation, limiting your carbs. This is all according to Vince, not my recommendations. These are Vince's. And he also, very interestingly, talks about water. And water, according to Vince, should not be. You should not drink water, especially during your workouts, but only in between meals. And there are two reasons for that. And I have to agree with Vince because as a scientist, I know this is true. Water is actually important in gaining weight. Understand that, first of all, we are humans, and humans are 70% water. So when you drink water, you are gaining weight. For those of you that may or may not know, water is involved in metabolism and can basically is used for creating polymers. Polymers in your body are the structures that create tissue, basically, right? And cutting a long story short, it is scientifically proven that water actually not only causes a gaining weight, but the gaining weight is actually solid. It is not tissue. It is not liquid. It is tissue. It actually is incorporated in your growing tissue, that is muscles. Now, another reason for that, therefore not drinking water while you're eating is important, because if you eat and drink water at the same time, your enzymes are going to have difficulty digesting the food, and undigested food will usually either be excreted from the body or worse, stored as fat. This is another important issue that Vince raises, to not drink water during a meal, because the undigested food can turn into fat and therefore prevent weight reduction. And of course, because water is a bulking agent, one should not drink water while training, because the training effect that you're trying to have is weight reduction. So drinking water during training will actually prevent that weight reduction. So again, a very good point there by Vince. Finally, maximum definition. Maximum definition, this chapter in particular, I've covered already in a previous video, which I'll link up here. But mainly, this chapter, as I mentioned earlier, is all about for people that are going to compete, that are looking to get ripped and shredded. And as he puts it, it's not for the faint of heart. It does require complete carbohydrate removal with a protein and a fat rich diet. For example, the steak and eggs, which I've mentioned before, and the use of lipotropics. Finally, a very interesting chapter was also the vegetarian reducing diet. And as Vince puts it, it's actually a very cleansing and detoxifying diet that could be used, for example, after competition, when you've been on the maximum definition diet, being on eggs and steak only. So there's a lot of information in this little booklet. This is why I like this booklet so much. I really hope you've enjoyed this. I didn't expect it to be so long, this video on Vince Gironda's blueprint for the Bodybuilder. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. Thank you for watching. Leave me your comments. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now.